Ryan, maybe we could start with your film, because it's the first one we see. I'd be curious to hear you talk a little bit about some of the locations and the people we see in the film. It's shot across Slovenia, Croatia, and Serbia, but I'm kind of curious whether these people and places you show in the film were chance encounters or they were destinations in a sense. I'm kind of curious.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's sort of, I mean, the film kind of came about within a structure of locating several places and then spending time within them kind of on separate trips with different people. And so, I mean, the locations in Serbia is in Belgrade, is at the Ganex Tower, which is somewhere I've worked before in a previous project. And there was a desire to return to this location of this building, which is it's a tower that has a residential side and a commercial side connected by a bridge and a rotating restaurant at the top. And it's the first building you see when you enter Belgrade from the airport. It's also called the Western Gate. And I had previously worked with the commercial side and wanted to spend time within the residential side. And this is how we meet Milos, who's sort of in the center of the film, with the mammoth bone. And so this is a location. There's a location at the Haladovo Palace Hotel, which is an abandoned Yugoslav hotel in Croatia, in the island of Kirk, which is very close to sort of the emotional core of the project for me, which is my grandmother's family's home, which is in Istria, which is the border of Croatia and Slovenia. And so there's sort of this network of locations that I have spent time working within over years, and traveled to them with my collaborators, Parastu in Ushapur and Fowler in Ushapur, for one trip. And then there was a separate trip with my father, Dan Ferko, who's also here. And we went back to spend time in these places with some of the family that I had never met, that he hadn't seen since he was young, 7 years old, as you hear in the film. And then there's a sort of a third version with Anna Dragic, who I work with, who lives in Belgrade and is a resident of these places. And this is sort of the structure of how we move through these locations. So some chance encounters, which deliver a lot, I think, and what's being searched for. And then some more sort of intentional interviews. Yeah.
Are there questions from the audience for our guests? Miryam, maybe you could speak a little bit about the sound design in your film, which is such an interesting dynamic mix of music. It sounds like there's Foley and found sound as well. I'd be curious to hear you speak about it.
Yes. Usually what I do in each project is I start with the sound, actually. I edit the sound and I mix it before editing the images. And for an instant, for this time, I mixed it a bit louder to be a bit uncomfortable to listen, because I wanted to, I don't know how to say that, to translate the tension between the couple who are are being driven away. Yeah, I edit the sound first, I mixed it, and for a week or so I listened to it, and I decided, okay, this is good, this is my movie. And then usually I don't shoot, I don't shoot images in the idea of making a film. I just shoot images, and I create some kind of an archive, like personal archive. So I went back to my archives and I took images that I shot like 11 years ago, and some images I shot 2 years ago in 80, and then that was like the movie. Yeah.
If there's any questions, please don't hesitate. I like that your film is structured around these exchanges between these lovers, which also takes place in your film, Erica. At the base of your film are these love letters. Maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's a cyanotype like love letters. It was my father's love letter, and I put it in there because the whole film is sort of like my personal reconcile with like my parents. And when I was little, because I always like sometimes I heard my mom say recite some of the letters, some of the words, some of the sentences in the letters, like for example, like you're like my mother would tell me that if a man tell you that you're like one of his 10 best friends is a lie or something. And as a child, I actually like found all this letter like in the closet and I read them. So yeah, when I made this film, I asked my mom to like take photos of those letters, and I make them. I just print them to a black and white on transparent paper, and then I like printing out on cyanotype like that. Yeah, like the whole film with all the shadow like transform into like white. After shadow after the cyanotype paper exposed, like the shadow will wash out. It's sort of like I was like thinking this how like your caretakers would really like influence your intimate relationships, and the host also like the process of like print those letter words onto like the actual films, also like the process of like reflecting all this influence, like looking back to myself or look at all this influence and also telling myself that I'm not there, I'm not them anymore, like that.
You've written a little bit about the film being inspired by the work of Shuji Terayama, the Japanese experimental filmmaker and dramatist. His film Shadow Film, which is a play, it plays with perspective and revelations, which you do as well. Maybe you could speak a little bit about why you wanted to.
Yeah, this film, like the structure and the idea of this film is very inspired by Shuji Terayama's Shadow Film, The Woman with Two Heads. And in that film, you can see like it's like a family and family live in front of the screen and on the white wall, and they use charcoal to like imitate the shadow of a human figure, but it's actually not. It's like how the body and the mind are different. Like you might in this domestic circumstancing, you like do your housework, but like actually your mind, which is like the fake shadow that draw by charcoal, was very depressed like that. And yeah, so I was inspired by that, and then and when I was playing with the cyanotype paper, which see the blue paper, and I just realized that you don't need to like put the object like right like onto the film onto the paper, but actually have like cast a shadow on it, and yeah, and then you see, and then after like you develop the paper, the shadow actually turned out white. So it's actually very different from the original, and it's like back to like the influence from like caretakers that just like sort of like I don't know, like a reconciliation with what I've been like paranoid about, like that.
Questions from the audience. Ryan, maybe you could speak a little bit about the music in the film that we hear at the start, this kind of chance encounter. It's interesting for your film that's somewhat about circulation. You think of the pop music from North America circulating around, and this guy that you meet is really hyped on Mountain and Bryan Adams. And
Stephen was a important sort of end to this duration of time over several months of this working in different trips with different people. And so I had started with my dad going to the farm and hoping to find it as something to connect to or be able to spend time with or stay within, and finding it that the roof had collapsed and that it was now in a state of ruin within the last sort of year or 2 years. And so then, I mean, there's this duration of time of passing through these other places with Paris doing fires after this, and then returning to the farm a few months later and meeting Stephen, who's there picking blueberries because it's where he goes to pick blueberries. And yeah, quickly like identifies us as not being from there. And so is asking, yeah, where we're from, and then immediately is like, okay, you're from Canada, so that Brian Adams is from Canada, which is, I mean, a way to locate wherever Canada is. I think it's, which is, I think, what the question is for me. And then, I mean, he gives us so much, and quickly offers to sort of open the door of his car and blast Mountain into the landscape. And so it gives this amazing opportunity for this sort of location sound, which is also this like score for like a cop drama or something, of seeing the police car shutting the border gate and all these things. Yeah, it was a gift, Stephen.
Maybe you could say a little bit about the sort of narrative element of your film and how you chose to. It's somewhat fragmentary, and maybe you could speak a little about writing it and whether you wanted it to be so explicit or not so explicit, and how you wanted to have these exchanges and the choice to maybe have it through these messages.
Yes, I think the movie I did before, there was a lot of dialogue, and I felt like I did not need the voice, because I kind of thought of doing like voiceover of people talking, and then I realized that if I did that, I think it's easier to try to find truth when somebody is speaking, like the intention of somebody speaking. So I thought that maybe letter would be a better idea, because it's kind of intimate, but also very cold, because they are stating facts about things. And I thought it was a good way to keep it open. You don't really know if he did what he was accused to do. And it was important to me, because with every film that I do, I don't offer answers, because the way I see the world, I don't understand a lot of things. And it would be like weird for me to do a movie and say, this is that, and this is what happened. So that's why it's like open.
Look around.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that I think that's all the time we have, but I'm sure maybe that people have questions. We can talk more a bit about them outside, but please join me in thanking our guests for sharing their films.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.